Hello all, and welcome to the channel. Today, we are joined with Ravenblood on the Rantings of a Mad Raven to discuss about the hauntings, the supernatural, and the supreme. And without further ado, so today we're probably going to focus our topics a little bit more towards a place that me and Ravenblood have actually been to in our lives, have had experiences in our lives, Clarksville, Tennessee. I tell you, this place has its own mojo. It has its own feeling. Like, it has its own kind of energy. And I feel like a lot of people who've been to this place have experienced this for themselves. And I feel like personally I would say my worst one was I had a friend who lived there, and we were friends in Clarksville, Tennessee, and every time I went to her gravestone or anytime I was around in her area, I would smell her perfume, or I would smell she always smelled like cinnamon, and it would so bad. And there was one day I was on my balcony and I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I was saying how much I missed her and how much I genuinely just wish she was there. And it felt like when we were in school, she used to grab my shoulder and turn me around, and it felt like someone, no kidding, like grabbed my shoulder. I turn around, no one's there, no one's in the house. I'm freaking out. It was so, but then after that, she was gone. And it was really like impactful, like that moment. And I truly feel like there's something in it. I don't know where, you know what I mean? If I want to say per se, if I completely believe in the supernatural, I just want to say more towards, I really believe in energies. I do believe in different planes of existence and transferic energy. I believe that we are all part of transferic energy. So come to, the theory on ghosts and the ideas on ghosts isn't too far-fetched for me to really look past and believe. And I suppose certain people have their own aspects of it. Some people look at it more like a religious aspect, or you know what I mean. I truly do believe in haunted ground, right? And my second story, I suppose, I would be talking about me going to Auschwitz. So for a field trip in Germany, okay, Dodd Systems, I just love them. But the Dodd Systems, okay, they were like, hey, we're gonna learn about World War II and we're gonna go to Auschwitz for a field trip. And I was like, woohoo, let's go. I had no idea. So we go, and it felt like the weight of the air is like 80 pounds, and one of the worst things was everything was recreated. So the land just didn't feel right. It's not that things around us didn't feel right, because I believe it was just recreated. It didn't hold that kind of substance really. But there was one thing that wasn't destroyed, and it was one of the gas chambers. And when they shoved us into that gas chamber and said, hey, walk in, go ahead, walk in, meine Kinder. They're showing it off like a museum, and you can see claw marks in the wall. And there was a nail embedded into that wall. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. It's cursed my memory forever. But, after experiencing the energies that I experienced in Auschwitz and the memories and situations that I experienced in Tennessee, it really did start getting me to look more into the supernatural, which is why I thought this was a great subject to start off with. And I'm going to go pass this torch on to Ravenblood.
So, we are going to be talking about our good old city of Clarksville, Tennessee, somewhere that I spent quite a bit of time in, about half my life to be honest, and then Miss Ravenlaced has spent some time there, so, and I'm sure she'll jump in with a story or two from her time of tales of there, but I wanted to start off with the first one that I've been to. To those people that I know that live in there, that city personally, and those that don't live in that city no more, uh, Main Street, as far as Clarksville, is a very, very historical place. There's been a lot of history that has gone on in that place from, migration from the 1700s with Native American tribes that have lived in that area, like so much history there. But one of the places that I went was actually Clarksville's First Baptist Church. Now, the church is still there. You can still go there, you can still worship, you can still do, your thing out there, but there have been sightings in that place. And I personally have had one of these sightings happen to me of going into that church where you can hear the old organ that is no longer functional, it no longer plays. You can still hear that thing going off once in a while. In an empty room, or when it's empty and there's barely anyone there besides the pastor and maybe a few of anyone else who might be lingering around there, yeah, you'll hear it clear as day. You'll walk in there quiet as a mouse, and then all of a sudden just the low humming of the organ that used to play there. It's, again, some of the pipes are still there, but the organ itself is not there no more. So please make that one make sense to me. That has always creeped me out. That is what really got me in to the paranormal.
I remember the unmarked gravestones, but the organ pipe, this is the first time I heard about this one. I remember the Civil War statues that had the cut off heads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep.
Those, the first time I saw those, I was like literally leaving, or like we were coming home from a party that we had gone to. It was me and a group of friends and this one senior's car, and we were driving down the road, and right as we were coming around the corner, they were stuck in the woods. So there's like this thick foliage, and there's this cut out in the foliage where they're stuck there, and their heads are on the ground, and it was just, and the headlights of the car flashed on it, and the way that they came about, it scared the
Lols. Well, I've actually had a few encounters also. Like, I've had a lot of ghost experiences out in Clarksville. Like you said, that place, there is a lot of that is haunted land, in my opinion. Like, and people got to keep in mind as far as the dark history of Clarksville and the southern states as well. A lot of these hauntings really came around usually in the round about 16 to 1700s. Okay, so if we're going to put this in context, a lot of bad American history has happened in the southern states. Let's just put that into mention. Okay, a lot of bad history has happened. A lot of people's lives were deeply affected by southern way of living. Okay, we'll just put it in very vague but broad terms for you guys. So there's a lot of mansions and stuff that are out there. There's a lot of plantations that are still out there. So if you want to do your history as far as the darker side of that, you can. But that's where I would like to say a lot of the hauntings stem from. It's just from all the negative energy, all the negative things that have just happened in that place. And the second story that I wanted to talk on was actually the Greenwood Cemetery, because I've been there 4 times. And every single time that I've been there, I have caught something, whether on camera or on audio. I don't have the audio anymore. I don't have the videos anymore.
I didn't even know where they were taking me. They're like, "Oh, come on, you're from Germany. You don't know America." See, my first experience with America as a teenager was this. So it was like, it was magical, it was beautiful. I love the woods, and the woods are captivating there. Absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, for sure.
Beautiful countryside, gorgeous countryside. But people
when it starts getting dark,
yeah, you don't stay out. No one stays out. Everyone goes inside. No one's like hanging out.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of lore that comes behind why they tell us kids that used to live in Clarksville, Tennessee, to stay out of the woods at night. And the story and the lore is that it comes from generation after generation after generation of Scott-Irish descendants that used to call Tennessee and the Appalachian Mountain Range and all of those areas home. So a lot of what we know about history, as far as the paranormal history there, it really stems from a lot of folklore and a lot of superstition and a lot of things that carried over from the Irish Scottish immigration. So that's also something that a lot of people don't really understand, is that a lot of people that have moved or migrated during the Irish and potato famine and stuff, that's where they all went to, because that area is as close to Ireland as their homeland as you can possibly get to, with the rocky terrain, the forestry, the animals that they have. That was as close to Ireland as they could get to. So, which makes sense with that, because when I went to the cemetery, four
Honestly,
different times that I've been there.
that's how I felt about Tennessee when I moved there from Germany. Was it reminded me not of Germany, mind you, because Germany has very much the same vegetation. So it's like it's not as diverse in vegetation as America, to be honest. So there were differences, but it reminded me, it was the woods, you know, the climate was very similar.
Very similar. That's why a lot of the immigrants in that time migrated there. So the paranormal stories that we hear, and a lot of and actually that's the funny thing too, is that going on with the cemetery, on the 4 occasions that I've been there, I have seen shadow figures, I've heard voices, and I've heard disembodied voices to where you can only pick them up on audio recordings, whether that's a phone, those old school freaking tape recorders or whatever that can pick up audio. Yeah, I'm going that old school. Or even the old crappy cameras that had night vision.
You know those people who have the uncanny ability of like right place, right time, and they're able to take that picture? Have you ever had a moment like that where you're not work, no matter how hard you try? I've had it happen uncanny amounts of times.
I have went on 5 personal paranormal investigations, and few of them were in Tennessee. Some of them were other, like, smaller, not very known locations that are on the map. I would say the most sinister out of the ones that I went to, and I say that word not lightly, the most sinister out of all the places that I've been to was actually in Tennessee as well. And it was actually, in my opinion, the Bell Witch house and the cave. That to me was like how you felt going to Auschwitz was like me going there. It is a dark energy. It is a dark feeling when you go there. When it's daytime, it's fine. But you feel like you're being watched.
I have to ask this because I was not.
But every time
I wasn't in America when Blair Witch Project came out. But was that about the Appalachian Mountains, or is that in reference to the
that
topic?
Is direct reference to Clarksville.
To Clarksville.
To Clarksville.
The Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
No.
It really stems from a lot of the wooded areas, but the story stems from the Bell Witch, which then translated into it going into the Appalachian Mountains. And then that's where, because witchcraft runs very deep in Tennessee. It runs very, 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 very deep.
I thought they were in Virginia or something. I didn't realize that they were, that was...
It was inspired by the Bell Witch.
It was inspired by the Bell Witch in Clarksville.
Yep.
My mind just...
But a lot of the most sinister things that I have witnessed was coming from that area of the Bell Witch house and the cave. Like, when it's daytime, you feel like you're being watched. Or at least that's how I felt. I felt like no matter where you went in the daytime, including that cave, you were just constantly being like, eyes were on you at all times. And you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know where that energy is like feeding from, but you can feel that there's something watching you. Now, when the night starts rolling in, and sometimes they will allow paranormal people to do tours or investigations there, if you get lucky to do that, that's when the night starts rolling in and it starts getting dark. Oh man, that's when I started having all the technical issues. My cameras would legitimately, I would go in, me and my friends would go in with at least 8 batteries. Because you have to remember, this is like early 2000s, so the cameras and batteries back then were not really the best of batteries like we have today, okay? They were really, really bad. So we carried a lot of batteries. And for the tape recorders, we carried a lot of extra little tapes with us. So, and I'm talking hours of audio, hours of video footage that we have to sit and watch. But during these investigations, our equipment kept going down, especially our cameras. We would have fuzzy images on the cameras to the point of like you could see like a shadow walking in front, a very misty, clear as day shadow, but it's see-through. It's completely transparent. You could see it walking across your screen, and then as soon as it does it, your camera starts freezing. And then you're turning it off, then you're turning it on. And then by the time you turn it back on, your battery went from 80% down to 20%.
See, that's what would happen to me. It would come back on, but it would be like barely.
Your battery would
be
dead like that.
Like all of the
So-
energy was sucked out of all the batteries, and sometimes, depending on how certain equipment would shut down, it would actually fry certain stuff too.
Yes.
Like
I've even had a couple of when
cameras.
SD cards were becoming a thing with some video
Yeah,
cameras.
yeah.
A lot of
yeah.
my SD cards
Fried
were getting
SD
corrupted
cards. Yep.
out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, worked fine.
And I would lose hours of footage, or even like when I took photos. Sometimes the photos would be so blurry that you couldn't even see what it was.
That reminds me, actually, there was one story. But Banshee, I see you over there rolling one and getting all ready for a 420 toke. So I'm going to join you in the festivities. Happy 420 YouTube. Thanks for being classy.
So there's a saying when it comes to the paranormal, and especially when it comes to how these spirits interact with us in the human world. A lot now of how they interact with us is actually through our technology, because they need energy. And energy is pure in its essence, so that is the most accessible source of energy that they can use and manipulate to be able to either take the form of a figure. This is why you see shadow figures, or you see shadow silhouettes and window sills or whatever, or they're actually using that energy to manipulate physical objects in our world, such as the poltergeist, which will play jokes on you, or close doors, open doors, slam stuff. Like,
it's in my concept of transferic energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred, right? So if you really think about it, what if when we leave, our souls or our energy leaves our body? Think about it like a battery being separated from an alternator, right? So I'm not saying that you're being destroyed, but chunks of you are being dispersed into the universe. Your energy
well, then that's where we have the other theory of we have another theory in the paranormal that we also talk about, and it's called the stone tape theory. So the stone tape theory is, in a nutshell, when you go through a trauma, if this person or object has gone through a traumatic ending, the emotions, the energy, even from the time, the physical time of that person being there to the point of not, they're trapped. Their essence is trapped. They didn't get a closure. They didn't get a, proper send off. They didn't get a proper goodbye. It was literally, they're here 1 minute, not here again. And that moment, and what we call the stone tape theory, is that when a spirit has unfortunately not lived on this earth anymore, they will stay permanently to that land because they have an attachment now to what happened in that event. So Gettysburg, for instance, is a classic example. Every person you talk to who has ever been to Gettysburg will say, I have seen a Civil War soldier, I've seen a Civil War nurse, I've seen Civil War people still walking amongst the field as if it was still happening, because that moment was so traumatic. And
Alrighty, there's going to be those moments in life. We're going to continue on with the conversation of Bell Witch and handing it off to Ravenblood.
Thank you, Miss Ravenlaced. So, back to where we started, with the Bell Witch. Like I said, that area, man, every time every time I talk about the Bell Witch, like, I do get this. What was
the story of the Bell Witch? It was, it's been since the 90s since I heard
Right. No, I got you. I do have it pulled up here for us, so it gives us a
reference.
yeah, it gives us a very small briefing on it. So the Bell Witch haunting is in nearby Adams, Tennessee, so it's not too far away from Clarksville, actually.
Okay, okay.
One of the most famous ghost stories in American folklore, the Bell family was tormented by a malevolent spirit named Kate, who focused her wrath on John Bell and his daughter Betsy. The witch allegedly killed John Bell in strange occurrences such as disembodied voices, which I've heard, objects moving on their own, seen that, and ghostly apparitions, have seen those, quite a few around the area, have been reported for years, especially near the Bell Witch Cave. So, in saying that, like I said, that's the short history of it. Obviously, if you guys want to do your own or dig into it a little bit more, it's actually a really interesting story. I really, really highly suggest you look into that story. But no, every time I talk about the Bell Witch, though, like it's a story that if you lived in Tennessee long enough, you know it by heart, and it's one of those stories that like it still gives you a little bit of a shiver. It still gives you a little bit of a chill because I've been to that location twice, and every single time, like I said, it's a dark fucking place there. It's a dark, dark place.
You know,
And
the worst thing was the river. It was always the river.
yep,
Everyone warned about the river. We were
I
told
was even
not to go
warned.
swimming in the river.
I was warned straight up never to go swimming in that river.
So the most I forgot about this, and this is a great headliner climax, like and ending to this tale because we're gonna have to wrap up in about 10 minutes here. But I'm Fort Campbell. You know the quarry.
Good old Fort Campbell.
You remember the quarry?
Yep.
Yeah, so the quarry, for all those who do not know, is a banned area where it's like a pond, or
Yeah, it's a man-made pond. I think it was
Yeah.
it was a mine and then it flooded, I think is what it
Yeah,
did.
it was a mine and it flooded, and now it's like a and it has these
Basically.
rock cliff sides of it, and some parts of it go up about 100 feet. Then there's like a 30-foot jump area, there's a 50-foot jump area, so the different areas where you could jump at different levels. Most of the no one jumped off the 100-foot because there were ledges in the water that you couldn't see.
Basically, if you didn't know what you were doing, don't do it.
Don't do it. Well, okay. So they would all the kids warn about it and say, "Don't jump off this one ledge because you can't see what you're jumping off into, and you could hit this rock." And there were kids from the school that actually hitting the rocks because they tried the 100-foot jump and they thought they could jump.
By the way, I think the correct term would be
enough.
unalive.
Unalive. Yeah.
The correct term is unalive.
The correct term is unalive.
Not here
But
anymore.
They would jump off the cliff, and they were not here anymore. Yeah, so it was one of those, like, we were always talked about it, we were always warned about it. So what happened was there was this 30-foot jump area, and this was literally the first day of me being in freaking this area. I had never been here before. I'm from Europe. I've never experienced America before. I was raised there, so I'm sitting here like I have no idea what's like. It was such a new experience. I was 16 years old. Oh man. We jump off this, and I'm thinking, this is so cool. The water looks so cool. And as you get closer, it's just black. It's just black, stagnant water, and it felt electrified. And when we hit that water, it felt like a million nails were grabbing us, and like hands were like clasping onto you, and it was just like you're being grabbed all over your body. And it wasn't just me. I get up, me and every single person who had jumped with me were freaking out. Something's wrong with the water. So we start like trying to get up this rock cliff. We were climbing up the rock cliff so bad we're bleeding on our legs, we're scraping ourselves apart. It was like we were full-blown panic mode.
Oh yeah.
Right? So we're full-blown panic mode, and I'm sitting here like, this is insane, and I feel like I'm being mildly shocked to death. Constant shock to death. It wasn't a full taser mode. But I would say if you cut the feeling of a taser in half, that's what it felt like.
Right.
So, and the deeper you went, so when we first dived in, it was more of an electrical current deeper than it was higher up. So higher on the surface, it was manageable, but you're still like, oh shit, like the whole way out. But when we first dived in, it almost shocked me into like going so numb I couldn't swim back up.
Yep.
And it scared me. And I think that's what scared everybody, was how bad we got shocked when we did that initial jump. When we got on the surface, we started calming down because it felt a little better. But that initial first dive into it, if I had dived head first and tried to go for like a really deep dive, I don't know if I would have surfaced again. That's how scary it was.
Yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
I never went into the river, but I used to fish off the banks of that river quite a bit with my grandfather, and a couple times been on a boat and been fishing off that river. And no, I don't like that river. I really do not like that river. And also with the history of that place, during the Salem witch trials, Tennessee was not, abide from that either. Like they were a part of that too, and
Yeah.
that river has got some dark secrets. And there's always been one thing. There's always been one thing that's been told to me in Tennessee: the woods have tales, and they will not tell you until it's time.
The biggest thing I remember from that river was just how muddy it always was. It just
It
was
was. I'd
always
never seen it
muddy.
once a
I don't think it
clear.
was ever
I've never seen it
clear,
once clear.
right? It was
Never
just
once.
always
Green, brown, muddy, dirty water.
yeah. There's a girl in my high school. She was unalived. They believe she jumped in, but there was never proven. Her shoes were found on the side of the bank. So who knows? But there was a lot of stories from that river that were just never good.
A lot of haunted history from just that city.
Just from that city alone.
Just that city alone, man. I'm telling you. So for those that do live in the Clarksville area, the good old 931 area code. Yes, I still remember my area code.
Oh my god,
Like,
I don't remember.
if you still live in the good old 931, man, look up your history of where you live. I guarantee you'd be fascinated by the interesting, complex, dark history that you call home of Clarksville, Tennessee. So,
So on that note, we're going to end today's podcast. Thank you all for joining. I hope you lose your mind and find your soul. Smack that subscribe button, hit that like, and hope to be seeing you around. Like always, have a good one.
laters.